Hi, I'm Nate, and I'm a camera addict. Maybe you can relate, but I've got a serious case of GAS, otherwise known as gear acquisition syndrome. I just love cameras, and I probably tell my wife at least once a week that I want all of the cameras. And over the years, I've photographed with more cameras than I care to admit, and I'm not even sure I can go back and come up with a list of all of them, but I don't know. It's embarrassing. It's been a lot of cameras. I've always been a bit of a hybrid shooter, and I enjoy shooting both film and digital. And because of how much I love shooting film, I was an early adopter of the Fujifilm X series cameras and bought an X Pro 1 when they first came out in 2012. And then I've had upgraded to other cameras in their lineup over the years. And they just provide that tactile shooting experience that I really love about shooting with film cameras. But my dream was to always own a Leica M. It's just seemed like the perfect blend of digital capabilities with just a rich heritage and the handling of film cameras that I love. And since I really love shooting in black and white, getting a Leica Monochrome just seemed like a no-brainer. And the one thing that held me back, of course, was the price, and I'm sure that's something that's held a lot of you back as well. They're just very expensive. I saved for years to buy one and finally found a good deal on a very nice used Monochrom Typ246. I will say that I absolutely loved my Leica, and I don't regret buying it for a moment. But, life happens and things got in the way and I had to sell it. And that put me in a spot where I needed to figure out what camera to get to fill the void. And I settled on going back to Fujifilm since they provide the closest experience to shooting on film and also with shooting with a Leica camera. And initially I felt like I was going backwards and I was downgrading by going back to the X-T5, but after shooting with my X-T5 for the past year and working on some projects, I've come to realize that it has been an upgrade in a lot of ways, and I put together a list of 4 reasons why the X-T5 has been an upgrade for me, and it's been really useful in some of the projects I've been working on. And the first reason is image quality. Now, keep in mind that the Leica I owned was a Monochrom Typ246, so it had 24.6 megapixels, and probably doesn't even compare to the quality of the newer Leica M10 or M11 monochromes, but I can't afford those. So I really wanted Leica to come out as the clear winner in this situation. I wanted to have justification to go back to Leica and upgrade back to a Leica, but truthfully, I almost can't tell the difference between the Fujifilm and my Leica files. So here's an example. The man on the left is a man that I met while he was out ice fishing in Nebraska. This was taken with the Leica Monochrom 246. And the man on the right was a gentleman that I met while he was out ice sailing on a lake in Minnesota. And this was taken with the Fujifilm X-T5. And I chose these 2 pictures. They're both older men. It's a very similar framing. They both have facial hair. When I zoom in on the gentleman on the left, we can see that the Leica has exceptional detail in the facial hair and his face. You can see the individual pores even on his nose. And when I zoom in on the man on the right, he was out ice sailing, you can see that there's a very similar level of detail. It's a little bit softer, so that I think the monochrome does have a little bit of an edge in terms of just how sharp it is, but they're very close in terms of the level of detail that I'm able to see. Here's another example of 2 women. Women do these types of winter sports and activities too. So on the left, we have a woman who is ice fishing. This was taken with the Leica Monochrom Typ246, and the image on the right was taken with the Fujifilm X-T5. So again, if we zoom in on each of these images, we have a pretty similar type of framing here and size, so it's a pretty good comparison. And I feel like the image on the left taken with the Leica, it's pretty crisp. We can see a decent amount of detail in her face and also the clothing that she's wearing. And then the woman on the right, again, we can see some, I would say, really good detail. And I would almost say between these 2 images that the Fujifilm X-T5 looks slightly more sharp and crisp. And there's a little bit better contrast. And so I think it's really kind of a toss-up between the 2 cameras. They both work very well. And I would say in terms of image quality, it's really hard to tell the difference between the Fujifilm X-T5 and the Leica Monochrom Typ246. Now, I know it might seem like a win for the Leica that it's able to perform at the same level, basically with half the megapixels, but if I can get the same quality picture from a camera that is a fraction of the price and has more features, why would I go back if all that truly matters is the end product and the photograph that I'm taking with it? Now, of course, the Fujifilm has one other leg up on the Leica Monochrome in the image quality department, and for me, that's the ability to take color pictures. Even though I primarily work in black and white, it's still nice to sometimes have the flexibility to shoot in color, because some photographs just work better in color than in black and white. And as an example, when I was out photographing ice climbers in Minnesota, I passed a really neat looking gas station, and there's also a car parked next to it that they were almost a perfect match in color. And that picture just looks way better in color than it does in black and white. The second reason to choose the X-T5 is the price. My Fujifilm X-T5 with two lenses, the 23mm and 33mm LMWR lenses, cost less than just a Leica body alone. And if you're going to get a Leica body and several Leica lenses, the prices are just going to be astronomical, and it's hard to justify. And if I can get the same picture with the X-T5 at a fraction of the cost, then for me, that's all that really matters in the end is image quality, even though I love Leica. The third reason is weather sealing. And I've been photographing recently in some pretty tough environments like cold, snowy places, dusty areas, and the peace of mind that weather sealing provides is great. The X-T5 has great weather sealing, and I've invested in weather sealed lenses so that I can work in these harsh environments and not worry so much about the camera and the internals. The Leica M is not weather sealed, which I've never really understood for being a professional camera, but you do hear a lot about professional photographers who use Leicas that photograph in very harsh conditions and never experience any issues. But I know that for me, if I've invested that much in Leica gear, like a camera body and glass, I'm gonna have a really hard time personally using it in anything in less than ideal conditions, just without having some anxiety. And my fourth and final reason is the shooting experience. Now, this is really highly subjective and only based on my personal experience shooting both cameras in a range of settings, but I found that having autofocus and burst mode and the weight and comfort of the X-T5 have saved me in a lot of cases. So let's take a look at some recent examples of work I've done with the X-T5, and this is work that I strongly feel like I would not have been able to capture as well on a Leica as I was able to do with the X-T5. Okay, so we're gonna look at some of the pictures that I took from a recent trip to Minnesota photographing ice races, or when people actually race cars out on the ice. This was actually my first time driving out into the ice, which was a little unnerving, but also really cool. And getting out into these conditions, there's a few things that were really beneficial about having the Fujifilm X-T5. One is the peace of mind that the weather sealing provides. It was really cold, it was snowing, it was really windy, so the snow was blowing as well. And the peace of mind of just knowing that my camera and lenses and everything is protected and totally safe was really nice. Having a very expensive Leica camera and Leica glass would just make me feel a little anxious in conditions like this. And so this is a camera that I really don't have to feel bad about shooting in pretty much any conditions. So I love that about the Fujifilm. The other thing that was really nice about the Fujifilm is the burst mode. And so a lot of times when you have fast moving subjects like this, having a fast burst mode helps me track subjects and then also photograph them as they're going through. And so I got a couple really nice pictures here of some of the movement of the cars, trying to show how fast they're moving. But you can see that having a burst mode really helps select the right picture. And I heard a recent talk from a National Geographic photographer about how many images he takes when he's on assignment. And he was talking in the hundreds of thousands of pictures, and basically said that if you're not taking a lot of pictures, then you're leaving things on the table. And coming from a film photography background, I've been more of being very careful about the number of pictures that I take, because each picture costs money. With the Fujifilm, I do feel a little less bad about that, and a little bit more like, okay, I'm not leaving anything on the table. I will find that right moment. And so here I can go through the movement of the vehicle as it's going through a turn, and I can select the one that's the best. I can select the one that's the most sharp or has the right amount of movement that I'm looking to capture and portray. And so that's something that with the Fujifilm is really helpful in doing compared to the Leica that I had. It was just more challenging to track subjects that were moving and to keep them in focus, and also to have a burst mode that was fast enough to capture motion like this so that I could select the best picture from the series. So would I have been able to capture some of these images with a Leica monochrome? Absolutely. Would it have been harder? Yes. Having to manual focus with a Leica, especially in conditions like this, where there just really isn't a whole lot to use to focus, since there's not a whole lot of contrast, the snow and the ice look so similar, lining up those two images in the rangefinder system would have been really challenging. So the X-T5's autofocus and the autofocus tracking were really helpful in maintaining focus as these vehicles were moving so fast and also coming towards me around corners. That just would have been really challenging to do with a Leica. Here's the burning question. Which camera do I recommend? And I can say that for me, right now, with the projects that I've been working on, the Fujifilm X-T5 is the better camera. It's the one I can afford right now. It has great image quality and provides the best shooting experience for the projects that I've been working on. But I know that if price wasn't a factor, and if I was just offered a Leica M11 monochrome, at the end of the day, I would take it. And just accept the limitations it would bring in terms of my photography. But right now, I'm trying not to worry about it so much. I'm trying to pass this gas or this gear acquisition syndrome and just focus on the gear that I have and the work itself, and not worry so much about the camera that I'm using. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I hope to continue to put out some new videos here about some of the projects I've been working on, maybe some of the gear that I've been using. In the meantime, get out there, and I will see you on the next one.